Destined One, maybe you've heard the news. Black Myth Wukong is popular, and I mean really popular. With the game closing in on 20 million copies sold, the future is bright for a studio that's seen its fair share of flops and failures. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're looking to the horizon for one of the year's most popular games and the future of Black Myth Wukong. Let's not bury the lead here. Black Myth Wukong, by all accounts, is one of this year's most popular games. And that's saying something considering we've seen the rise and fall of a few massive titles and DLCs, such as Helldivers 2, which peaked at 458,000 concurrent players just on PC. And we can't forget about Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which saw close to 800,000 players return to the game. It's been an impressive year for games with monolithic titles propping up an otherwise lackluster showing, and for every amazing experience that releases, there are 3 or 4 duds that fill in the voids between. That all changed on August 20th with the release of Black Myth Wukong, a game everyone knows at this point. Single player, compelling fantasy story, a visual feast, all the telltale signs of a smash hit. Little did the team at Game Science, the developers, know Black Myth was about to sell 18 million copies in just 2 weeks, peaking at over 2,415,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. The game is fantastic, and you no doubt know how we feel about it if you've watched our review or any of our secret guides out on the channel. But the really shocking news came from Daniel Wu, an investor in Hero Games, the biggest external shareholder in the development studio. During a conversation with Bloomberg, Wu said that an expansion to the game is already in the works, alluding to Elden Ring's DLC Shadow of the Erdtree as a good comparison. When I hear that, I get immediately excited, because while Black Myth Wukong is already climbing the list as one of my favorite games of all time, it's hard not to want more of it, especially being an entirely new IP. From a story perspective, I won't even begin to attempt to dream about where the game could go next, mainly because I had so much trouble following the story as it is. But that's a me problem, and I'm sure players much smarter than me can explain in the comments where the game could go from a purely narrative perspective. Now, from a gameplay perspective, I think the team is only just scratching the surface, and they've already made a ton of great headway because of how sturdy their foundation is. A few ideas that immediately pop into my mind are adding a new stance to combat. This single-handedly ended up being my favorite aspect of the combat, and once I really started to understand the dance a bit more, I really enjoyed weaving together all the various parts of combat, from the skills and spells to the spirits and vessels. Adding another stance feels like DLC-worthy territory. In the same vein, you could argue that the team really didn't fully embrace spells throughout the base game. Yes, there were a lot of transformations that players could unlock, but the other offerings, while great, weren't expansive, giving the same level of attention to mysticism, alteration, and strand that transformation received would also be something I'd expect in the DLC. Of course, this game has already been coined a boss rush by many, and I think it's fair to say if a DLC is released, there will be more bosses. Duh, that is a no-brainer. But what kind of bosses? Well, now that is the question. I'd love to see the team continue to push the boundaries of what's possible within their gameplay engine. Fights like the giant Shigendog weren't the hardest the game had to offer, but man was it cool to experience a fight on that scale. Other encounters, such as the Scorpion Lord, proved just how hard Black Myth Wukong can be. Game Science explored the full spectrum of boss battles, and I trust them at this point to continue doing that in any future content. What I'd really love to see are new thematic elements, and I'm not just talking about boss battles here. Each chapter of the game was wildly different, and that was hands down one of my favorite aspects of the game. And with the DLC, I want the team to really explore that even more. And again, if you understand the story, you might already have an idea of where the team could take us, so as a reminder, leave your comments down below. Finally, and this one is all me, new systems. I am a sucker for changing up and augmenting something fundamental about the game. For example, how great would it be if there was more customization within the weapon system? Right now, we can't upgrade weapons, so we're stuck picking between a few different mythical options. Changing that around and perhaps crafting our staff and fusing it with different stats and unique effects based on the parts that we find could be one way to change things up. The team could also expand Zodiac Village, which is the perfect backdrop for additional features. Right now, there's no real way to test out your build or experiment unless you constantly challenge Yin Tiger, and while that's something, sometimes a good target dummy will do. You can also easily make the argument that Black Myth Wukong is tailor-made for a boss rush mode, but it has to be tied to some real and impactful rewards. Just putting a boss gauntlet in doesn't entice players enough to want to explore it. There has to be real incentive behind it, which is the case for any major system added to a game. There are ideas, big and small, floating around, and even some rumors of cut content that never made it into the base game. Based on a Screen Rant article from September 1st, the entire prologue of Black Myth Wukong was supposed to have us take on 1,000 Celestial Warriors, which would have been insane. Likewise, the fight on the back of the giant turtle was supposed to have environmental elements, but the complexities of making it all work forced the team to remove the idea altogether. If you think this team is short on ideas, think again. If you've played through the game, and I mean all the way through the game, you know just how interesting some of the chapters get. And with the very reality of DLC coming within the next couple of years, it's hard not to fantasize about what's next for the game. There's one thing we haven't factored into this entire discussion, and that's Black Myth Wukong's inevitable release on Xbox. It's still not entirely clear what happened with the game ahead of its launch. Rumors of a PS5 exclusive swirled, but no real definitive answers ever surfaced, and while that left us scratching our heads, there is simply no doubt a Game of the Year frontrunner won't eventually come to Xbox. According to the website Demand Sage, there are 200 million active Xbox users, and if you think Game Science is going to miss an opportunity to sell their game, which is rated above 95% approval on Steam, to a voracious Xbox audience, you're nuts. I think it's a long shot, but if Xbox could somehow secure the game for a Game Pass release, that would absolutely give them something to market to potential users. Over the past few years, Xbox has leaned on exclusives to try and sell potential players on the online service, and having a game at the caliber of Black Myth certainly would help. As we think about the rest of the year, my gut is telling me we're going to see Black Myth again at the Game Awards. It's just my opinion, but I think it's winning Game of the Year at this point, but I also think it would be the perfect time to tease an upcoming DLC, as well as announce that the game is coming to Xbox. Everything would hit right before the holidays, and that would be a huge win. Guys, I have no problem talking about the business success of a game, especially when I've played through Black Myth and absolutely love it from top to bottom. The game is special, and as someone that always is in favor of new IP over expansions and DLCs, I'm just excited that there is a new player in the AAA space, one that, at this point, has our goodwill. I'm curious to know what you guys think, though. Black Myth is one of the fastest selling games in history. It just soft announced its upcoming DLC, and it's a Game of the Year contender. How do you feel about all of that? Leave us a comment down below and let us know. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.